Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of This Is Me Attitude Podcast with me, your one and only host, Rachel Hills, just a girl in her 20s, trying to figure this crazy life out and bringing you along the way every single step of the way. And today is absolutely no different. I have, yes, another guest speaker on, and I am so excited for you to get to know her. Her name is Zainab, and I share a little bit more about some interesting facts about how we met and all of the things in today's interview. So sit back, relax, listen up as we have a great conversation talking all about Jesus. Welcome back to This Is Me Attitude Podcast. I am extremely excited to have yet another guest speaker on this episode. And today we have Zainab with us. And kind of a fun, cool fact is that we met over social media. And an even cooler fact, in my opinion, is that we live on completely opposite sides of the world. Yes, I said that right, of the world. She lives in Africa and I'm in the US. I have never physically been in Africa. So the fact that I get to meet people from there or meet people anywhere is really, really cool. And just the power of God by himself, obviously, and of social media and everything that he's created in that way. So welcome to the show, Zainab.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. What an honor.
I'm so excited for you to be here. Can you give a little bit of a rundown to our listeners about who you are, what you're all about, and anything you really want to share?
Okay, so my name is Zainab and I live in South Africa. I just recently started my own business, but I'm a teacher by profession. So I work with little kiddos and I am madly in love with Jesus. Yeah.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for saying that because I feel like some people are just nervous to say that they're in love or that their faith is on fire for Jesus, and just to be able to maybe hear that they're not alone is something huge in the fact that it, like I said, it's all over the world. Like obviously God created the whole world, so that's something to be really excited about. So thank you so much. I'm so excited for this conversation. And then, sorry, I realized as we were talking before we started recording, I didn't pull up the question. So I was like, oh, wait, I wanted to ask her stuff. I need to have that in front of me. So anyways, to jump into the questions. The first one I have for you is, when and how did you become a Christian / accept Jesus into your life?
Okay. I'm going to try and condense the story. I was born Muslim, actually. I know. My whole family grew up, went to like all the way through high school, Muslim. And then I went to the US actually, and I spent a few years in the US. And that's why I met Jesus. I was really struggling with my faith, with finding a place. And I think the gap just began to grow bigger and bigger and more intense. And I found that I was missing something. Um, yeah, and I didn't know what it was at the time. I didn't know it was Jesus, but he definitely had a plan for me because I had met a friend, another girl from South Africa actually. And we hit it off like right away. We were like best friends immediately. And at the time, I felt comfortable to just open up to her. Hey, I'm not really doing so well. I don't know what it is. I don't know. It was like borderline depression, just discontentment, just feeling empty. And at the same time, not feeling like I have a community, like I fit in, like things just weren't right. There was something wrong. But I didn't know what it was. And I was panicking because I was like a million miles away from home with no family, no support, nothing. And at the time, this friend of mine, she had just come to know Jesus. So she was born again after being atheist. So she was going through this journey of like rediscovering Jesus and yeah, and just being on fire for Jesus. And she was like, is it okay if I like tell you a little bit about Jesus? And she went on to tell me about who he was. And I don't know, in that moment, I couldn't explain it. And I feel like most Christians have this moment. It's just it's unexplainable how you just feel Jesus fill in that hole or that gap that you have been needing for such a long time. And as she was talking about who he was, I was like, this is exactly what I've been missing. Like, I need this. I need this connection with God. I've never had such a thing in my life. And then she asked to pray for me, and we were just bawling and crying. And yeah, there's a lot of details that are crazy. And you could see that it was clearly Jesus. It was clearly him, like just trying to orchestrate this meeting between us. Yeah, and just this like reconciliation for me to him. Like it was insane how everything worked out. But yeah, that's how I came to know Jesus. And I yeah, we prayed together. Obviously, I was a mess for like, I think a month afterwards. I didn't know what was happening, where I was, but I just knew that I had found this amazing, incredible thing that I never want to let go of. Yeah, and then we found a church. I went to Burke Community Church in Virginia. That was where my family was at. Met some really awesome people there that really, really just carried me through those first moments of getting to know the Lord. Um, yeah, and the rest is history, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. That is definitely an adventure, for lack of better words, and just hearing how you came to Jesus and just coming from a different background. Like I honestly, I almost had tears in my eyes because it's just so cool to see how much like that moment, and non-believers, I don't feel like they understand that moment as much. Like, because I have a few friends that don't believe, and like just trying to explain that, they just look at you like you're crazy, and it's like, no, like
Yeah.
it's a thing. Like I promise he's there, like he's with you. And just so hearing that from others is just so exciting to me, because then I know that like I'm not crazy. Like he helps
Mhm.
obviously more than just me. So that is so cool. And I definitely think that it'll be kind of a I don't know if it's culture shock or if it's like just a different way of thinking of to most listeners, because I like I said, I'm based out of the US, so most of my listeners
Mhm.
are in the US, and just to hear how different ways come to Jesus and different stories and all the things, and my computer is doing notifications as I'm trying to do this, so I apologize on that. But as
Okay.
I just got a little distracted because I'm like, I'm trying to do this conversation. So yeah, thank you so much for saying that, because I just think it's so cool to hear everyone's different walk of life, but it comes to the same point. Like Jesus is the same point. Like he doesn't change. He wants all of us to
Yeah.
be different because that's how we were created. And it's just to feel that love and to see that love is so cool. Okay,
Mhm.
so the second
I
question
love what
I
you're
had,
doing.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, I was gonna say, I love what you're doing. I love this. I just love that you're getting people together and having us share stories on here. And in the beginning, when you said you just want to see how our stories differ or how they're the same, like I absolutely loves that. Um, yeah, it's so awesome. I don't think I've heard a podcast like this before. I think it's beautiful what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I really hope that listeners that are hearing this, it that maybe you think the same thing, or maybe you get a different takeaway from it, because that's really my ultimate goal. And a little bit of a side note from where the podcast started. When I first started this, I made it really about me because I thought like that's what it was supposed to be, about different things that I've gone through. And then the closer I got to Jesus and God in my walk of faith, like he really just like turned it around. It's like, nope, it's gonna be about me, and you're gonna talk about faith. And it was really just like a hit in the face kind of feeling, because I was like, oh,
Mhm.
like, this is what it's supposed to be for. So the fact that other people are seeing that is really, really cool to me. So to go into that, where have you seen God work the most in your life?
Um, I think for me personally, it's in identity, just because from the minute I was born into something completely different to who he is. And so the minute I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior, I think that's when the work began on my identity, because I had a ton of insecurities that stemmed from, yeah, just being in a religious environment. I went to a Muslim school, so I just felt a lot of like, um, yeah, there was just a lot of exclusion and discrimination going on there. So I think my identity was pretty like broken by the time I had I had met the Lord. And so for me, just looking over the years, I have gotten so much better. Like even when I journal about it, I feel like I'm about to cry. but but even when I journal about the things that I'm able to overcome or believe about myself now, and to look back and be like, whoa, this is really hard for me before. Like I never knew that it was even possible to be here. Obviously, through Jesus and his grace and his love, and him proving and telling me over and over again through his word how precious I am and that I'm his. Um, yeah, so it's I think, and he still continues to work on my identity. I still have very human moments where I'm like, oh Lord, I don't want to be this way, and then he's like, well, we're not that way, so we're gonna just work on it again. Yeah, so it is a work in progress, together with him, but there has been a lot of, and that's what I just love about the Lord, is that everything that he touches is eternal and is permanent. So um it's not like a temporary thing. Yes, we go through dips and we go through hard times and things, but ultimately he makes sure that he puts something in us that is lasting. So yeah, so that's what I feel like that's what he's worked the most on with me personally.
That's awesome, and I definitely relate to the, like, human aspect because I feel like
Oh,
the stronger I've grown in my faith, I, like, feel the divide of, like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be like this," but, like,
yeah.
humanly, I wanna, like, go tell that person I don't like them or go say this, and, like, "No, I can't do that," like, that's not what God would want. Stay focused, and sometimes I feel like I just argue with myself because I was like, "No, we're better," like, "You gotta listen. It's gonna be okay." And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that I relate to the journaling. I actually went to school for journalism. So
Oh,
since
wow.
then, I love journaling. Like whenever I'm in a store, I want to get a new notebook. Like it's gotten to the point my fiance is like, you do not need any more notebooks. Like you have plenty. Um, but so I love to be able to write like different experiences, and I've had that same kind of thing where at one point this thing that happened would really irritate me, but now I'm just like, oh, like God's got it, or oh, we're just not as worried about it. And it's just cool to see like your own growth and the fact that like you can see it as yourself compared to if somebody was saying it to you, because I think that the fact that you're seeing it yourself means something more
Yeah,
because you're reflecting on the past version of you, I guess is the best way of
right.
saying that. And the fact that you're becoming more and more like God, because that's what he wants us to do, is become, but obviously we can never be him, but like just that how the Bible
Yeah,
says of like acting more like Jesus. So,
yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, yeah.
all right, what made you decide to share your faith as much as you do with those around you?
I just feel like I want everyone to experience what I'm experiencing. I feel like life is so challenging, especially for us. I don't know. I feel like today in this day and age, there's just so much going on. There's so much going on. And I feel like with that is like so much confusion. And I feel like the only one constant thing is God, and the only one like true um yeah, like a powerful, effective thing is the Lord. So I try as much to share, and I hope and I pray like every time I put something out there, I I really hope that whoever reads it will be touched by it the way that I was, because of how powerful the Lord is. But yeah, like I mean just everything, like the joy or the becoming a better person, like we just talked about, like all of that I wish more people knew. And I wish they knew it came from Jesus, and it can only come from Jesus. Yes, I try. I don't do a lot, I don't post a lot because sometimes I'm like, I don't know, some things I just want for me, but but yeah, but when I do, yeah, when I am prompted to share, then I'll often put something out there just because I really hope that someone else can catch it the way that I did.
Hmm. No, that's awesome. And I honestly relate to that as well because everything I post, I feel like I was either like pushed to post it or like something happened to me. And I was like, oh, if it happens to me, like it's possibly going to happen to others. So I want to share about it. So, and the fact that it's being able to be faith based about it, I think is really, really cool. And just showing that you're not afraid to show the word of God, because for the longest time in my personal experience, I was nervous to talk about my faith online and just nervous about being like contradicting to other people, because I
Mhm.
have a tendency to be a people pleaser and just don't want to like rock the
Me
boat
too.
per se. Yeah. So the fact
Oh,
that I talk about something so controversial, I was like, are you sure, God? Like, am I the right person? Am I the right person to come on this podcast and talk about all this fake stuff and this and that? And then he just kept showing me like, nope, like you're gonna do it. So it's cool the fact
yeah.
that like through doing the things that he's telling me to do, that I've been able to meet you, that we relate so much in the different aspects on that, and just sharing faith overall. It's just so cool. So
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
what is your favorite part about church overall? For it could be either the whole experience of church, or if you want to break it down into like individual services, however you'd like to take the question.
Okay. So I go to a pretty awesome church right now. Um, and I think what I love about church, or my favorite thing about it, is just that we can all be imperfect together in the presence of God. Yeah, and I know, I mean, I've been to different churches, so there's different experiences, but I think the Lord has really been talking to me about not having very high expectations, or not basing my faith on what I experience at church. Because I've had a few friends who have had church hurt and, have left the church and that sort of thing. And I think that just comes with maybe yeah, just putting high expectations on people at church and forgetting that they're human, just like you. And we're all in this together. We're all trying to learn together. We all have different tasks and we all have different gifts. And yeah, so I kind of just love that at church we can all just be um and that it's super helpful and encouraging. Like it's a place where you can go for comfort, you can go for support, you can have help if you're struggling financially. Like, yeah, it is just, it's a beautiful, I love the church community for me. I just feel like it's a beautiful place to be with God's people and experience different kinds of people and different kinds of things. And I feel like that really challenges you and helps you to grow all in itself. Yeah.
That's awesome. And the one thing that really stood out to me is the fact that you mentioned that we are people and we're not perfect. So if listeners are going to a specific church and they're not liking it because of this certain person, like that doesn't mean that it's God that is doing something. It
Yeah.
means that it's
Yeah.
God's people that are doing something. So I really like that, being able to have that differential of saying like, no, like we're just as human as everybody else, so we make mistakes. Like we're not God himself, so we can't be perfect in every aspect. And I just think it's a really good thing to highlight, in the fact that we try as much as we can, but we're still all just human. And it
Mhm.
sometimes, like for me personally, like that is such a struggle, because I'm just like, but I want to be able to do this thing so like great and so awesome. And I'm just like, I'm just a dumb human sometimes, even though I know I'm not dumb or anything like that. But it's just like, it's so frustrating. So the fact that that can show in churches too, I think is something that's important to highlight. And that each person has their own experiences with coming to faith, and also with going to different churches. Because me personally, I've moved a few different times, and trying to find a different church each time you move is way bigger of a task than anybody really says it is. And I'm sure it was for you when you moved
Yeah.
from the States and back and forth. And it's just cool to see how each person's experience with that is a little bit different, but the same as finding their home church.
Yeah. Yeah. You said that way better. That's exactly what what I wanted to say.
Awesome. See, we're on the same wavelength and we didn't even try.
Yes. Praise Jesus. I love this.
The next question I have is, what would you like the listeners to get out of our conversation today?
Well, that beautiful, wonderful people exist all over the place, like Rachel. um, yeah, I just love meeting like-minded people and talking about things that we have in common. I think that's really beautiful. Um, yeah, but mostly I think I'd love them to take away that like we can just tone it down, like we don't like I feel like there's so much pressure to work or to strive in our own strength. And yeah, I feel like that when you have the Lord, everything is easier. Like things just flow easy. Whether it's friendships or going to church and everything that we talked about today, it just always seems to work better with the Lord. So I hope that they I hope that by listening to this podcast that they feel encouraged to press more into the Lord. Um, yeah, and just allow him into all the spaces of their lives.
Yes, that was really well said. I totally agree. That's mic drop. We're good. All no, not quite the end, but that is really good. And I think that is a really awesome thing for people to remember, that it is just the fact of having the relationship with God, and that we cannot do 1,000 things in one day. I need to remind myself of that daily, even hourly sometimes, because I write a to-do list the size of like Mount Everest. So I definitely like how you mentioned that it's just that the world is so different than what God anticipated or wanted us to have, and that he wants us to be different. So that is a good way to kind of wrap things up. And the last question I have for you is, where can people find you after our conversation?
So you could find me on Instagram mostly. And this is gonna be hard to like say. I feel like people because my name and surname are so hard to say, but it's Zainab underscore Mlongo. And that's my Instagram.
I will have it in the show notes as well so everyone can find it. And I
Yeah.
definitely encourage you to go over and follow her and get to know Zainab. She is absolutely amazing, as you can tell by our conversation. And it's just been a really cool experience to, like I said, get to meet people from all over to talk about Jesus and just to share the light. And I hope that you, as a listener, got something from our conversation today, and knowing that you're not alone ever, that God loves you regardless of all of the ups and downs you've been through, and that you can believe in him and trust him no matter where you are at in the world, and or any other spot. If you're in outer space or any of the things, I mean, you never know. So he's always there with us. And I just wanted to say thank you so much, Zainab, for coming on today. And I just can't wait for listeners to get all of the takeaways from today.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Wasn't that an amazing conversation? I know you got some awesome takeaways from that conversation, because I know I did. And just the fact of having those conversations is truly something that is only what God can do. Because I wanted to share a little bit of a takeaway at the end of this episode, and the fact that I always pray right before having guest speakers on. But today, for some reason, it just felt a little bit different. And I definitely feel like God was with me in this conversation and with Zainab, and just how we connected, how the conversation went, and how amazing all of these takeaways I know that you are going to get from that. So if you did get any takeaways from this episode, please, 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 please go let me know over on Instagram at Rachel Fun Hills. I absolutely love to hear how God is working in your life, and how this podcast maybe is helping, how I can help you in bringing somebody else onto the podcast, or if you'd like to come onto the podcast. I'm open to all of it. So please go message me over on Instagram at Rachel Fun Hills. And until next time, never, ever, ever, ever forget, God loves you.